The Economic Club of Miami, we have a number of members here. Thank you so much. We also open a lot of our events to the public as well. Roughly, we do about 4 or 5 events like this a year where we have speakers. Sometimes we partner with great groups like National Review Institute, and we also open it up to anybody that wants to come as a guest. But we also do about 4 or 5 member-only events a year as well. A lot of networking events. Really a great way to meet a lot of great people across the professional environment, many different industries here in Miami. So if you're interested in becoming a member of our club, you can talk to me, or there's some cards on the table just outside this room. You could also visit our website, econclubmiami.org. So econclubmiami.org, and you can apply to be a member of the club. And it also includes access to these events as well. So we've only been around a couple of years, done a lot of great events. I would like to call your attention to a couple things coming up for us. First of all, we're going to be doing on February 2nd, which is a Friday. It is sort of the end of hedge fund week in Miami, and we are going to be doing a day-long event called the Miami Economic Forum. We have a lot of people coming in from around the country, including from some different Latin American countries. There's going to be a big focus on finance and investing in emerging markets, particularly with Latin America. And it'll be held at Miami-Dade College Padron campus in Little Havana. We did an event there last month, but we're actually going to be using their very large ballroom, which is on the 16th floor with some fantastic views of Miami. So mark your calendar, take the day off work, but really consider it a business day because you're going to be meeting a lot of great people on February 2nd. So that's a big event. Also for members, tomorrow I'm going to send you an email with a couple member-only things. And one of them is we have an opportunity to have a private conversation with some authors at the Miami Book Fair coming up the following Sunday. It's only open, we only have room for about a dozen people to join us for that. So I'll be sending that out, and the first come, first serve, Sunday, November 19th at the Miami Book Fair right here downtown. And then also our great friends at the Miami Downtown Development Authority are inviting all of our members to a private event at the Perez Art Museum on November 29th, which is really going to be fantastic. And so if you can, you'll see that in the email tomorrow as well, and be sure to respond. It's a really amazing event, about 400 different people across the city at the Perez Art Museum, and we're lucky that the Economic Club of Miami membership gets invited to it. So thanks so much. I'm now going to turn the event over to my friend Frank Filocomo. He works at an organization I worked for 4 years, National Review Institute. They do amazing work. And if you like William F. Buckley, or if you used to watch Firing Line, and if you're young and you haven't heard of William F. Buckley or Firing Line, you need to go to YouTube and there's hundreds of great conversations that you can listen to. He had if you were a person in public life, maybe it was Muhammad Ali, maybe it was Mother Teresa, you talk to William F. Buckley on Firing Line. It's amazing. But they really carry out the legacy of William F. Buckley, and so they have programs for all sorts of people, young people, including young professionals. So I'm going to turn that over to Frank. Thanks so much for being here.
All right. Thanks, Francisco. I appreciate it. And thank you to the Economic Club of Miami for doing this with us. We do these partnership events around the country. We supply these other organizations with National Review's top talent like Andrew, and in turn we get to expand our audience. So it's just a great thing. And before I go any further, I'll say that Francisco, when he was a part of NRI, was such an integral component in giving us a foothold in Florida. So he was really the guy to give us a presence there. So just a big round of applause to Francisco. He's awesome. Yeah, so we have a lot going on in Florida. We're going to be here for regional seminars in January. We'll be in Palm Beach. And what the regional seminars are, they're these half-day workshops that we do. We have one in New York City. We have one in Chicago, Dallas, Houston. And we'll be in Palm Beach talking about the foundations of freedom. Ilya Shapiro, Rich Lowry, Dan McLaughlin, a lot of National Review's top talent. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. January 29th, you could put that in your calendar. And then another thing that we do is something called Burke to Buckley. And what Burke to Buckley is, oh, I see we have a fellow right there. Burke, to Buckley, there are these educational workshops that we do, and we do one in Miami in the spring. There we go. You could go up to, what was your name? You go up to Melissa and ask Melissa. But we've had people like, we've had Catherine Lopez and a lot of other great people, Lee Edwards. So Florida is an important place to us. We'll be back. All right, now to our great speakers. We have Andrew Stuttaford. Andrew Stuttaford is a fellow at National Review Institute. He is the editor of National Review Capital Matters. And a little bit about National Review Capital Matters. It's a part of the magazine. It's a part of the website that promotes free markets, free market enterprise, capitalism. And it's just such an important thing. It was launched in 2020. And especially now when you have people pushing for industrial policy and things like this, it's so important to have people like Andrew, Kevin Hastett, Dominic Pino, and just so many other really talented people. And before Andrew was doing this, he was in international markets for 40 years, and then he retired, and now he's back doing a great service, I think. And then we have Siri Terjesen. Siri is a professor and associate dean for research and external relations at Florida Atlantic University. And this is a crazy thing that I read, and I spoke to Siri about this, but so internationally, Siri is internationally recognized expert in business, higher education, philanthropy, and get a load of this, is among the world's 2% most cited scholars with over 18,000 citations to her 3 books and over 90 peer-reviewed articles. That's incredible. So I'm going to pass it on to Andrew, and you guys will tell us about the future of ESG investing, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end.
Great. Thank you very much, Frank. I'll just get up for this a little bit. It's great to be here again. I'm somewhat intimidated to hear about all those citations. All I get is insults for anything I write. It is a delight to be in. Thank you for having us, the Economic Club. And for me, it's fun to be back in Miami for the first time since 1987. So I was looking for Crockett and where were the Miami Vice boys, but they don't appear to be around. ESG, which we're going to talk about, something I came across in the twilight of my financial career, and I thought was nonsense, and nothing I've heard since has changed my mind. But I think 2 things, perhaps, just to kick off my introduction. The first is that ESG is often sort of summarized, not least in Florida, as woke capital. And I would argue that it is something much more than that. That it is there is the woke side, and there's plenty to debate about that, but it is fundamentally a threat to shareholder rights, and the basis of our free market system is shareholder capitalism. And the moment you start bringing in other considerations, you start to unravel the web, and that is not a good idea. You want company managements to be focusing on managing for the profit of their shareholders, and that is the social value that they provide. And the second thing is, from time to time, not least on the right, you hear that we've reached peak, if you like, woke capital or peak ESG. I don't think that we have. I think that it's probably more resilient. It's going to take more than one stake to be put through this particular heart, because there is so much money to be made out of it, to be quite frank. But I suppose the final thing I will say is, and we can talk about this, it is really, in some ways, a threat to democracy. Now, I don't want to sound completely paranoid and lunatic, but the reality is what it is the conscription of corporate power and money to achieve agendas that they can't be achieved at the ballot box. And that, to me, I think is a very serious consideration. Siri.
There we go. Everybody hear me okay? Great to see everyone. First of all, thanks to Frank and Francisco and National Review for hosting this and coming all the way down from New York. We hope that you'll get back to South Florida. more frequently in the future. And also, big hellos to our National Review Burke to Buckley Book Club. So there are lots of new faces in this audience, lots of people who know people who might be interested, but that is an amazing experience at the Biltmore. I think it's like every other weekend. Francisco's run it. Please consider that program. It's terrific. And I'm so excited to be here with Andy because I've enjoyed reading his columns. You're like the reason why I subscribe to National Review, one of the many reasons, but you're so on top of that. So what I would say with this topic is, boy, it's something I think those of us who are researchers, and I'm guilty, I brought some academic papers under here too, we've seen this coming for a long time because where you can buy data, they've had these ESG ratings, and then people have started to talk about it. So to pick up on a couple of Andy's points, I just want to add that this can affect everyone. On the way here, I walked past some, coming from the Bright Line, I walked past some police officers who were on their horses because there's going to be 2 political events in Miami tonight. Their pensions are invested in companies that might be in this ESG. The folks who are working on this building and refitting it might be subject to ESG guidelines around what HVAC, et cetera, that might raise the cost of capital. The people at the bar who are investing in, say, ETFs, and the prerogatives of those fund managers. So it's affecting everyone. And it also has the potential to make these enlightened elite telling you exactly what to do, and not just the government, and also the potential for cronyism is huge, because who is going to control each and every one of these sectors, which we're going to get into. So do I get to ask you the first question? Yes. So what is ESG?
Well, what it is in theory is a form of investment analysis, which basically measures a company for its environmental, social, and governance impact, or environmental, social, and governance issues, I would say. And it is extremely loosely defined, which suits a lot of people, is all I can say. And it is used as a scoring system, and it is also used to exclude the flow of capital. It's really about directing the flow of capital in a way that is about more than just money. And so, for example, you have oil scores very low on ESG, which in many ways, so if you're an investor, you apply your ESG score, the E is the environment, of course, and oil companies do very badly. Now, the fact that the oil companies are amongst the leaders in green innovation is completely irrelevant. There is just scoring, says, oh, oil company, you can't invest in that, and what it is designed to do in the longer term is starve companies of capital. And so, again, the agenda is about more than just investing. Claims made that it will improve performance, and perhaps I'm going to ask you this. I don't think it does, and the evidence appears to be that it does not, and logically it does not. But one always has to remember that the rewards from ESG, this system, which appeared for me towards the end of my financial career, as I was saying at the beginning, I thought it was nonsense. Our analysts were surprised by it, but it's now a big thing in Europe. It's been around, as I was reminded earlier on, for longer. And the final, what it should not be confused with is something called socially responsible investing, which is different. And for years, for example, I worked in the investment business for 40 years, and if you had a client who managed money for a church pension fund, they wouldn't invest in alcohol companies or tobacco companies. And they always understand, you understand the ethical reasons for that. That made sense. And they always understood that that might mean giving up return. They felt cigarettes were wrong. They weren't going to invest in tobacco companies. And if that meant losing a few basis points in performance, so be it. ESG has not been marketed in that way. So does it work?
That's great. I've actually been studying this since my PhD, because back then we did have some preliminary ESG measures on, for example, percent women on boards, or how sustainable are these products. So there is no research that shows this. People got confused, and so many of you are financiers. I'm embarrassed to say this, but there were researchers out there who confused market capitalization with market growth, right? So they would say, well, the bigger companies, they have more X on their boards, or they do more of this stuff. But they meant the faster growing companies, but really they were just saying, well, yeah, these companies just have more money, so they can have more board directors and so forth. I want to bring up when this all started, which was a UN Environment Program piece that was written back in 2005. So as Andrew mentions, we've had this. We've had these churches who are investing their own capital, and their parishioners are making those choices. But what happened in this is you don't have a choice. I'll give you another example. Universities. There was a huge divestment movement so universities all have foundations, they're separate entities. There was a huge divestment movement, especially ironically, well, not really ironically, the exact same universities you're hearing about now that aren't stepping up. And so some of them pulled their funds out of oil companies to satisfy the millennials that were protesting. But then the next year, it went bonkers up. The number one performing university endowment last year, I think, was University of Nebraska, which is heavily invested in these oil companies. But then you had all these, including my former employer, American University, that was no longer investing in oil and gas. So we know the results, but yet people still do it. Why do you think that is? I mean, what's going on?
Well, when you say people still do it, the question is, who are the people? I mean, if you're sitting there in your pension fund, you're basically presented with a menu. You don't have much choice. The people who are taking the decisions here are it's basically the C-suite on one side and the very large investment managers on another. And the thing about Milton Friedman, and when Milton Friedman, by the way, when he talked about the importance that a company being run for its shareholders, people always think that this was some 1970s fad, sort of like flared jeans or whatever. But in fact, the idea of shareholder primacy dates from the early 20th century. You can look at the law cases that establish that. What he did not really anticipate is that you would have shareholders, except in very limited circumstances, shareholders who are focused on something other than investment return. And now you have these shareholders, a BlackRock, say, who are focused on other issues other than financial return, and they may not have a direct financial interest in the financial return, but they are nevertheless managing the shareholding, and they are doing so really out of an agenda which has been pursued by the management class within the investment management companies, and if you're a company on the other side of the equation, within the C-suite, and the shareholders who would have probably stormed the building 50 years ago are disintermediated and are powerless. And that's one of the reasons this has taken off.
Mm-hmm. And I find that so ironic, because the motivation to make profit is what makes all these companies great, treats their employees better, gets better supplies, offers more value. Let's talk about what states can do. So I'm just going to remind you that we're in the great state of Florida.
Yeah.
We've done a few good things here under the Paul Renner era in the legislature, and our current Governor DeSantis and CFO Petronas. But as you look across the country. And National Review, he was kind to say that thing about 18,000 citations. He gets like 18,000 views in like 2 hours. So it's it's taken me 30 years and you 2 hours. So just pointing that out. But what can we do? What can states do? What can people do?
I think, well, the states, what has been very interesting, and as you say, the great state of Florida has taken a lead on this, what the states can do, because Washington at the moment is, it's locked up, and the SEC and others, they're all pursuing the ESG agenda. The president is the president, and the Senate is the Senate. So nothing's going to change at the legislative level, at the federal level. At the state level, a great deal is going on because the governors of the legislatures of many states, dare one say it, red states, are well aware now of what is happening. I was at a conference last year and was delighted to hear I think it was the Solicitor General of one definitively red state saying that they thought that ESG was a real threat to democracy. So the message has got out one way or another into the states. And what you do is you say to the big investment manager, you have a lot of money to play with, and you say to the big investment managers, look, we have the state of Florida, we are responsible to our taxpayers, and we are responsible to our shareholders, to our pensioners. You cannot play ideological games with the taxpayers' money or the pensioners' money. Therefore, if ESG is entering into your calculations in anything, say, but the most peripheral way, we'll take our business somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And there are ways to track that, by the way. If your pensions and investments online has an endowment tracker, if you want to track any endowment that's over $1 billion, and also a state pension. So you can find out exactly how much the Louisiana firefighters, for example, earned or lost last year on those investments. So certainly we can go after these. And of course, you can look in your own portfolios and see what's going on, because those are going to have ESG ratings. What about states? Let's talk about some other dimensions, because the cool thing about Andy and National Review is that he's on top of every new issue. One of the big issues this week is wind, and of course also because of Mid-Atlantic. Do you want to share a little bit about what's going on there?
Yes. Regardless of the, wind, we don't need to get into how well wind turbines work. If you follow Scandinavian equities, which I did for most of my career, the Danes actually led the way in wind. And so I've been looking at this sector for decades, and it works to a degree, but only to a degree. But the issue about what has happened in the last week is that we have had, the administration has said that it wants certain targets to be met by 2030 for offshore wind. And the problem is the deals that were struck, the driving force in the deal was essentially climate policy allied with a fatally naive assumption about costs and interest rates. And you can believe who you believe. Jim Grant came up with a remarkable calculation many years ago, which I'm sure you've seen, Siri, that interest rates in the period of ultra-low rates hit a 4,000-year low. Well, if that's right, and he's pretty shrewd, 4,000, well, I'm not entirely, who knows, but it's not going to carry on at this ultra-low level. And so you had all these projects built on assumptions which were profoundly unrealistic. So even if wind delivers what its advocate says, which I doubt, the financing couldn't work. So you had Ørsted, which is a Danish, the largest operator of wind, or largest, I think it was largest operator, but certainly the largest in the field of either bidding for or preparing to run offshore wind. It pulled out of 2 massive projects in New Jersey, off the coast of New Jersey, and we have had other people pulling out elsewhere and on the East Coast. And this is BP is another one. And note that BP, an oil company. And this is not a problem solely confined to the US. In the UK, suppose they held a wind auction and no one came. And that's what happened. They had a wind auction, bids, excitement, no excitement, just embarrassment, because the company said, we can't make money.
And I want to say that this goes into other industries too. So a couple of weeks ago, we were asked to meet with the leaders of one of the big homeowner wind insurance companies in Florida. That's all they do. And it was researchers and this basically CEO. And so we got to ask him a lot of questions in a closed room. I said, so, why are the rates so high? Well, no, it's the reinsurance where you go to Zurich and Milan and New York. Well, why is the reinsurance so high? Oh, because you guys have really bad ESG ratings in Florida. So I had some friends from back when I lived in Europe, and I emailed and texted them. I said, is this true? Yeah. So, you can think about that the next time you pay your new wind insurance rate. You don't have to do that in New York.
So if I could interrupt you there, you mentioned risk. ESG has been sold in different ways over the last few years because each way that's been sold has proved to be nonsense. And one of the ones, if they sold it honestly, by the way, which was to say to people who wanted it, which is to say, here's how you invest if you're worried about oil, but this may cost you some performance, I would have no objection, so long as people actively chose this knowing that it would cost them performance. But that's.
There are other ways you can do that. Let me just point out, you could do that if you wanted to take yourself off the grid and entirely run solar off your house, right? That's okay. That's your decision. But going back to states' responsibilities, states have a responsibility to make sure that there is a reliable source of energy even through natural disasters.
And it won't, the claim on ESG that it was going to reduce risk in a portfolio, there is just nothing to back it up. Because people said there was a chap who no longer works for HSBC, the big bank, and he made a speech which ended his career with HSBC by pointing out that the idea that there was financial risk associated with the climate, the E, once again the E, and a lot of this really is about the E. Didn't hold because the typical length of time that people make an investment it's not for 7 years. It's much, much shorter. And there is going to be no appreciable climate risk, certainly not of the type that you cannot already hedge for in that time. But it's much more of a risk if you reduce the field of potential investments that you're going to make, because you narrow your choice. If you narrow your choice, you increase your risk.
And I know Francisco is going to give us the cane here for Q&A, but I want to just say, or maybe that's it already.
You got 5 minutes.
Uh-oh, there we go. We've been covering a lot on the E, but there's some good examples of the S, right? So I actually did walk into a Target 6 months ago with my daughter, and I was horrified, and I thought, never again. And by the way, I'm never going to buy that stock. But I was blindsided completely by Anheuser-Busch, and I'm still holding on to those Sam shares. I did sell the Disney after I saw what was going on. But those are a couple examples of the social, which is the adherence to some critical race theory or critical gender theory or some other type of corporate activism that has nothing to do with creating value for customers or answering shareholder needs. And then I want to talk about the governance, because this is my area of research. We haven't covered it too much, but these are the quotas. And we've been talking about these from Congress, but some of these pieces are also coming through just new rules inside these commissions. So the SEC has we think by the end of the year, 16 new rules that it's going to make. or rules that it's going to say it's going to make, and then it's going to make them. And the one that's coming soon is on quotas for gender and race everywhere in the organization. We thought it would just be the boards, similar to the NASDAQ, and the EU has basically had this in Norway or another country since about 2003. But now, this could be through the entire organization to report those up, and you can imagine the FTEs. So I just want to highlight that that's happening. You've got the social credit scores. You've got a lot of other stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with shareholder value.
Nothing at all. And the SEC seems to have forgotten that what is its job is investor protection. It is not meant to be setting a social agenda. Who should set, and here we go back to my melodramatic remark about democracy at the beginning, who should be setting a social agenda? This should be decided democratically by elected legislators, not by the C-suite or regulators.
Mm-hmm. And this has been going on in other areas. So I came down on the train and I was working on the non-compete agreements, because it's a little bit of ES, it's the S part of that, because the arguments are, well, you know, people can't move freely and it's not equitable, but that wasn't decided by your congressperson. That was decided by the FTC. And that's going to go forward. And the same thing with the SEC. Even though there are some commissioners who are opposed, this is all just getting railroaded through. And yes, we have a government shutdown maybe on the 17th. That doesn't matter, because these guys can continue to operate.
Yeah.
So what's next?
What is next? I would be watching for the climate disclosure rules, which will basically impose. No one quite knows. There's a furious fight in Washington, but no one knows quite what's going to emerge. But the SEC certainly want companies to disclose their emissions. And the question is how far you take that, and that's one of the areas of debate. But the point is, under existing SEC rules, you are obliged, if you're a public company, to disclose any material risks. So you should be disclosing something that's material, and if you don't disclose it and the company gets into trouble, it's policed, you're going to get sued. It's easy. What the SEC is now doing, and even more so, keep an eye on what's been going on in California, because you're going to get states setting the more, in inverted commas, progressive states setting the pace. They will require disclosure after disclosure, and that is not designed to protect investors, but to bully companies. So it's actually a diminution of shareholder value, not an increase to it.
And let me point out that that could also lead folks to never bring their company to public markets, right? Which means those policemen can't invest in that. And there's already a lot of great PE companies, or in occasional cases, delist. So in Norway, when the quota was introduced by Ansgar Gabrielsen, a minister who literally didn't have any authority, he just called all the journalists to his house one morning and said, I have an announcement. We're going to have a quota. And then they were the first to have the quota. And by the way, the Spanish quota was a law written by the king. It wasn't passed. Now, the EU thing is going through the parliament, because that's what the EU does, right? They go through these bureaucracies. Well, should we open it up to questions now? Here we go, Melissa.
Hi, everybody, Melissa.
Let's. This is the wireless. We can get this on the video.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Miami. Melissa Saldana. I was part of the Burke to Buckley second cohort. And I was, full disclosure, I was progressive. I was a full-blown Democrat. I found religion, and now I'm here. But everybody in this room, we're all wonks. We follow this stuff. So how can we, I think part of it is an issue of messaging, because how can we reach the normies that all they do is watch CNN, MSNBC, mainstream media, and explain to them in simple terms like I did to my my Uber driver. I told him, oh, yesterday was election. He lives in Hialeah. He didn't vote. And I'm like, listen, the local stuff is more important than the presidential because your garbage, your water. So what can we do in this room, but also what can institutions like NRI, NR, the universities, explain it to us like we're 5-year-olds?
You want to take that one first?
Well, I think you raise obviously a very good point there, and I think that that is one of the reasons why woke capital, to use that shorthand, has risen to the surface. In that, you're not going to get people very excited by talking about shareholder rights. Oh, let me talk to you about what Milton Friedman wrote in 1970. I mean, there's no better way to empty a bar, and so this is the problem. Or you say, well, this is a threat to democracy, and so people either roll their eyes or move on. And I think that one of the reasons that people have focused on the woke side of it is because it is, it's in your face. I mean, you talked about Target and Anheuser-Busch and all the rest of it. How you explain, I think in the end, is I think you do have to, the woke stuff is fine, although it comes with a danger, which is if you read something like the FT, you will see, the Financial Times, you will see that they dismiss the attack on ESG as merely Republicans playing culture war politics. So they actually enjoy the woke capital label themselves. And I think you just have to repeat again and again and again that this is a threat to your retirement pension. Above all, this is a threat to your savings.
Let me answer that. Great question, Melissa. And I'm thinking about that a lot since I'm from Ohio and we had two laws that went through yesterday, one of which was legalization of marijuana. I'm not sure if you've been to Ohio lately, but it's the last thing we need is a cannabis store in every corner. But let me also add that, I mean, I know so many of you in this room. I'm excited to meet you after this. Each of you has a story, and you can tell it, and there are great outlets out there for your op-eds, and then you can share that also with your family and friends. But that story is likely to resonate with them, and I would beg you to do that if you're ready to do that. And then, of course, it's easy to pick up on the ones that are just there, right? Like Sam Bankman-Fried's company had like perfect ESG scores, right? It's actually like an inverse thing between his perfect scores, and the actual quality of the company. But so just to pick up on those, and then people are agentic, right? Like my students want to get great jobs regardless of whatever, right? Their political beliefs, their race, their gender. They just want a meritocracy again, and that's important. But of course, you can also peel it back and look at the investments. I do that periodically, just check the stocks that I'm tracking, and boy, you can get really upset. I own some Silicon Valley Bank. I did not see that coming. But, that's like a gut punch, too. But what's next, Prince? Let's go.
Thank you. Ooh, that's loud. My name is Ari. I work for the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I help Israeli companies enter into the U.S. markets. A lot of Israelis who are coming in for the past 5 years have kind of been blindsided by activists coming out of universities, especially premier universities. Many of these Israelis are very excited about the E and the G, but very questioning of the S. In some cases, it's put serious dampeners on their progress, and in other cases, publicly embarrassed the entire enterprise, including their investors. So how do we differentiate between the good S and the bad S, and the good faith actors, the bad faith actors?
I think that when it comes to the way you distinguish between it, in all of these cases, the E, the S, or the G. And the G, by the way, if you look at some of the data, the G, in a traditional sense, governance has always been an issue. Things like have a separate chairman and CEO, that works quite well. But the basic test is this or is this not making money for the shareholders, the people whose company it is? And if you are, for example, trying to get a company to opt for BDS, for divesting from Israel, that is purely political. And if you can't justify it financially, and you won't be able to, the company should not be doing it. If we wish to ban, God forbid, investing in Israel, that should be decided by the legislature, not by activists within the company who are just trampling over the owners of the company, the shareholders, and trampling over the returns of the savings. So that's how I would distinguish between good and bad.
Just to clarify one thing.
Sure.
It's mostly been on racial and gender concerns, not so much on BDS.
Yep, that's a great point. And from what I know, I haven't been in Israel for 20 years, but I did serve in Machanat Safon a long time ago. And what I would say is you've got similar issues there because of the Ashkenazi versus Sephardic versus 20% of Technion, which is a really good university, are Arabs graduating with software who want a job. So there's always been some interesting issues of who gets jobs in Israel. I want to talk about the university issue. This better not be live, but I will tell you it's really super exciting. One very elite university in this country is going to privately, they've already started reaching out to Israeli MBA students and faculty and those who are aligned at top universities and saying, if you don't feel safe where you are, come to us. And they are one of the richest, best universities in the entire country. I'm so proud of them. And so you may hear about that, you may not, but that's happening. I think the actions of these others, my colleague Mike Ryle and I have written quite a few columns on this because one of his parents survived the Holocaust too, so it's personal. And we are, the efforts by many people to keep track of this is really important because you get to choose who you hire, right? You can hire the top grades, you can hire the top values. You as employers get to choose that. It shouldn't be chosen for you. Those are just a few thoughts that I have on this issue. I think it's an important one, and it intersects particularly because so many Americans are also hold Israeli citizenship, and of course Israelis are in lots of other countries where there are lots of other things happening too. I do think that we're lucky here in South Florida because this seems to be a pretty good oasis, and I know a lot of Israelis here work for Teva, has a big presence here too. What's next?
All right, we're here.
Thanks. Hi. So, as more and more people are becoming aware of what's going on, I speak with my friends, and more people are just amazed that these executives in the C-suite at Anheuser-Busch and Disney are actually doing these things, and they say, well, look at all the sales they're losing, and yet they don't stop doing it. And so I was trying to figure out why, and I, for better or worse, picked up Vivek's book, Woke Inc., and he explained that in his view what's going on is the state pension funds from these blue states, Cal Penn, New York, Illinois, the largest ones, are exporting their politics. You mentioned this earlier. And they are telling the folks at State Street, BlackRock, you have to do this or you're losing our investment. And so my question to you is, what do you think, in trying to identify the problem so that we can actually solve it, is the primary driving force? Is this states exporting their politics through their pension funds into the private market primarily, or is it really that the folks in the C-suites share this ideology? Because I'd like to know what you think is the most dominant, because that determines how we should focus our response and where it should be targeted.
Oh, thank you. This is so fun for me. Okay, so one of the downsides of quotas, wherever they are, gender quotas around the world, is that you don't always appoint the most qualified woman. One, you shouldn't do that anyway. But two, you get the daughters, the wives, the nieces, the granddaughters of the chairman. We've a million studies. Hermé hired like some minister's wife who didn't have experience. But the scary thing is, in this country, you look at those boards and you see a lot of ex-Obama administration secretaries and junior secretaries and this kind of thing. So if you actually peel back the boards, like Colgate-Palmolive is one that comes to mind, you get a lot of these. Now, that's always happened, but and it's happened years ago. It was equal with Democrats and Republicans out of the House, but now you get this overwhelming majority. You're not hearing about prominent Republican advisors joining publicly traded companies, but you're seeing it all the time amongst very leftist Democrats. And then they're going to bring those politics. And no, they don't care that much, because the average board seat, well, the average board seat makes $67,000, but the average board seat on those types of companies is somewhere between $350,000 and $900,000 a year, and they'll have 3 of those. So that's pretty good living if you have 3 of those. You don't even need to keep your full-time job anymore. Yeah, where can you get that, Melissa? We'll work on that. In California, although let me point that out, that was ruled unconstitutional, right? So each state has a constitution that says we will not discriminate on the basis of anything. We are not going to prioritize. So California did pass this law, got a lot of fanfare because they were the first state in America. One woman and one other. An other could be an ethnic, racial, or it could be a sexual minority. So even if you were a guy but you said you were a woman, then you would count in that second category. And you had to have one of each in California. But that's no longer constitutional. But that didn't stop a bunch of other states from talking about doing this. So yeah, let me turn it over to Andrew.
I mean, I don't think that it's only the states. This is, this is, there aren't sinister gatherings of people planning sinister things to rob shareholders. Well, maybe at Davos, but apart from that. And it is sort of spontaneous, but it also reflects the fact that in this managerial class, people share values. And unfortunately, those values are not the same as what the shareholders might be hoping for. If I don't want to beat up on the poor old Danes, but Ørsted, the offshore people, also had a very high ESG rating, a very low-risk ESG rate. I had a look at this. And they took depending on how you calculate, a $4 or $5 billion hit on these contracts, which I would say is, as write-downs go, is not trivial. But always, one says follow the money. And with ESG, that works. There's a lot of money to be made, and from fees and all the rest of it, but there's also other ways. So one of the Ørsted, basically, 18 months ago, and I don't know when exactly they introduced it, they said that the bonuses that executives get, half of that bonus will be aligned to how they're doing for ESG metrics. So the company can be going to hell, but it's a green hell, and that pays quite well. So what you do, again, you've cut the shareholder, well, not they weren't cut out, shareholders, of course. You've reduced the influence of the shareholders, and the managements do very well out of this. And moving it away from just one company, it's not fair. I read a criticism in somewhere, maybe it was FD, normally pretty sympathetic to ESG, saying that this new move to align management pay with satisfying ESG goals, in fact, has been the softest of all soft options, because making a profit is difficult. On the other hand, hiring the right number of women, relatively easy, checks the box, in comes the bonus. So there are a lot of factors that are working together to keep this going, basically.
Let me just point out, that's not happening. Like, one of the largest privately held companies in America is Koch Industries. And Koch Industries continues to subscribe to Charles Koch. He's written about it. It's in Good Profit, market-based management, where folks are compensated based on how much value they bring to the organization. And they can have this base and this bonus. It's not set. But that's not happening in these publicly traded companies, right? That's the difference. And that's why I think a lot of folks would like to keep their companies private.
Okay, we're going to have 2 more questions here. If you guys could just keep the answers a little bit brief, we'll work 2 in.
I'll make this brief. So for those of us who work in mid-size or larger companies, not necessarily like big Fortune 500 companies, that have seen ESG sort of nastily creep its way into day-to-day business operations, what are some just simple tips and advice you can kind of give to folks in the workplace to try to oppose this?
It's very difficult, and to go back to the earlier question about this, why has this evolved, and why do managers behave in this way? Partly because they want a quiet life, and do you want to be the person in the company cafeteria saying, it isn't right that we're doing this? And the answer is pretty hard, especially if the person saying you should do this is your boss. So it's just, I don't have, there's no magic bullet here. It is just persuasion, gentle, let's look at the facts, does this work?
Boy, this is a hard one. Really depends on your industry, right? Because you've got all these other companies that you're keeping track of, and to some extent you can look at that. But again, ESG, oh, by the way, the numbers are all over the place. We haven't talked about that, but there's a entire cottage industry in producing these numbers, and there's a bunch of different companies. And auditors. Yeah, I'm about to go there. Our number of accounting jobs and number of accounting grads, and same at FAU as across the country, basically declined 10% over the last couple of years. I don't know anyone who grew accounting. But the number of ESG accounting jobs at PwC and other companies went through the roof. So you can look at your competitors, including the privately held ones, and say, look, they're not doing it. We had to take a brave stand at this at FAU, and our dean is very free market, and that's why I came here, and Mike is too, and Bob and Akil, and everyone, Francisco, everyone has come through FAU. I think it's a flavor of this. But the then provost told us, hey, you need an associate or an assistant dean of diversity for your business school. And we're like, what? We're the 15th largest business school in America. We already have 6 people who have assistant associate roles. Each of us is super busy. We don't need another one. By the way, who the heck's going to pay for that? So we pushed back, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just do that. And, here's a report every year of the people who came to my classroom. We had, do you guys know Armstrong Williams? We had him 2 days ago. So Mike's smiling because he met him. He's he's Ben Carson's best friend. He's Tim Scott's best friend. He's one of the most successful and most conservative African Americans in this country. We bring him to campus, and others. So we push back a little on this, a lot on this. I think you can, at the end of the day, you've got to deliver those results. And this is window dressing. And I've seen it happen. I've been watching this happen for 15 or 20 years. Good companies finally get it. And then the other thing I'll say about this Anheuser-Busch, somebody's about to break this story, so I don't want to tip it too much, but what he found was that woman was told by her boss and her boss's boss, more diversity, and that's how they chose Dylan Mulvaney, and she kind of felt pressured into it. And that woman had actually had a number of successful campaigns at Anheuser-Busch before this, but she felt pressured and she wanted the next rung in the ladder. And it used to be in career tournament models that was based on merit and value. But now it's based on that. But you got to stand up to it. I want to give a shout out because Minskers and I were talking about the Wharton and the UPenn thing earlier. But one of the things that the Apollo CEO, who's now pulled out of and was on the board of Penn, said, I didn't stand up to this, right? And we hear this, right? Then they come for this, then they come for this, then they come for the Jews, and the da-da-da. And then eventually they come for you. And at some stage, you just have to stand up for it and say no. And it may be unpopular, and there may be other routes to do it. Personally finding it's very nice to call Tallahassee every once in a while. But you should do it. And maybe that's not the right company for you, because there are a lot of other companies that are privately held that are killing it in your same sector that would love to have your talents too.
One last question.
Okay, so stipulating some of your answers. First of all, thank you guys so much for such a great conversation. This has been terrific. Yeah. So stipulating that it may be the case that lots of occupants of C-level suites are sort of Harvard and Ivy League graduates that share these ESG-type values, that the managers of BlackRock also share these values. Since recently coming to FAU, I'm now suddenly by the way, from the University of Toronto. So,
He was on the Jordan Peterson bus.
yeah. So I'm suddenly surrounded by all these free market colleagues, but many of them have a sort of belief that markets have this magical power to work. And my question to you is, having stipulated the previous assumptions, these seem to present arbitrage opportunities. We know that Ramaswamy, for example, runs some funds that don't do ESG stuff, and you would think, well, if I'm not target, I can challenge them by not putting gender stuff in my 5-year-old bathing suit section. Why, though, does it seem that this is not happening? The get woke, go broke doesn't really seem to be happening, and I'm not sure that my sort of free market, hardcore free market types really are, sort of have the right conclusions. It doesn't seem like markets are doing what they're supposed to be doing given the arbitrage opportunities available.
Well, that's partly because markets are subject to regulators, political influence, and you have to go sometimes softly. Although I think one of the ways not to address something earlier is a little bit of lobbying. If you want to play the diversity game, let's talk about viewpoint diversity within companies. But there are arbitrage opportunities. I read the other day, but they're happening, and this is why the SEC, one of the reasons that they are pursuing this disclosure regime is that they want to trap private equity and private companies. Because basically what you have seen is, and this is absolutely as predicted, is that people have been buying up coal mines, dreaded coal mines, and great investments. It's turned out they were meant to be stranded assets, dead, waste of money. Not at all. People saw the arbitrage. People have been taking oil companies private. The great Harold Hamm, they can see, get the asset cheap. So that is happening, but it is easier for a magnate than for you and me. But nevertheless, if you look at stocks, if you had bought oil when oil stocks when the height of an earlier height of ESG mania, when they were being beaten down, you've done very well since. Or if you had shorted wind companies, which had at various points performed extraordinarily strongly on nothing, if you'd shorted them then, markets do work, but it's rough and ready. And I hate the term market fundamentalist, but the point about markets is they work better than anything else. And we have to remember that than anything else.
It's so hard to follow you, Andy, but I would just say also the local markets that you know. So one of my dearest friends is one of the most successful entrepreneurs. In fact, his first real purchase was a building like this from Mark Cuban when Mark Cuban failed it out at age 20. And he keeps no money in the public markets because he doesn't trust anybody. And instead, he trusts his insights on real estate and gas stations and other pieces. Now, I think that's a bit, those of us with full-time jobs don't have the liberty of doing that, but there's no rule that says you need to do this, right? I mean, Mike is my amazing colleague, you need to talk to him afterwards. Yes, the state of Florida is putting money into 401ks for us, and we only have a few choices, but it's not putting your entire asset class in there, and you can make other decisions. And I say that, though, you're sitting next to a really nice guy from Morgan Stanley, Dan, so. But the point is that you can make your own decisions just as you have, and you can also start your own pieces. Thank you, Francisco.
All right, well, everybody, let's give a round of applause for Siri and Andrew. Thank you so much. And really just grateful for everybody here as well for being part of this. I know there's always a lot going on in Miami. There's something going on down the street in about an hour. But I wanted to let you know we have this room here for about another half hour. There's a few more drink tickets. So see Tom, and you could redeem those here at this bar. Tom, raise your hand. Tom is one of our great student interns from the University of Miami. So go Canes and go Owls, of course. We also have some students here from FIU, so go Panthers. And the other thing I want to mention is, obviously, we've been partnering with our great friends at National Review Institute. They have some materials over here. Please take some fun stuff over there, including some Buckley buttons and things like that, and some material from them. But also, the other side of National Review Institute, as Frank mentioned, is a non-partisan, nonprofit organization, is National Review Magazine, which you probably know that's where the brand comes from. And that's what William F. Buckley started in 1951? 55. I should know that. There's too many things in the 1950s. But National Review is hosting also a debate watching party downstairs, and this bar was actually double booked tonight, also by the Libre Initiative, which is a great group downstairs as well. And so National Review and Libre Initiative will be downstairs starting at 7:30. If you want to stay and watch the debate from here, just go one floor down to the third floor, and you could talk to Garrett about other drink things, but otherwise it'll just be a nice space for you. Yeah, but thank you so much. And again, if you're not on the email list for the Economic Club of Miami, make sure you see us before you leave or go to econclubmiami.org. You could also talk to us about joining as a member. But thanks again for a fantastic conversation, and thank you everybody for coming.